Come on.
Hello everyone, the Skilled Roy here, finally back with a custom card video. And today I'm finally getting back to reviewing some custom cards. Unfortunately, over the time of all the crazy amount of leaks, all the crazy amount of content that came out, I was super busy going across all the different trailers and all that sort of stuff. So I had never really had the time to really get back to custom cards. But with the new year, I really want to try to get back to doing custom cards. And so before we even get started on these amazing Zeri cards, if you have a custom card you want to get reviewed, check out the form in the description of the video and you can go ahead and submit one there, and it has a chance to show up on the next episode. But otherwise, let's hop into the Zeri custom card review. Now, just before we get started, Zeri is the newest champion for League of Legends, a super cool lightning character from Zon. I'm really excited to play her actually. She seems really dope. And these cards in particular were made by T-Rox, and they really sort of focus on the overall sort of gameplay style I think that matches her really well. We need to start with the very first part, which is the new keyword he designed. The new keyword is charged. A card triggers its charged ability when played if you've attacked this round. Now again, just to be clear, it's when played and not when summoned. This means you can only play it from hand. You can't like cheat it into play or revive it or do any shenanigans to reset it multiple times. It's only if you've played it from your hand specifically. All right, the first card is the Quick Bolt Scamp. It is a 1 mana 2/2 in PNZ obviously, and charged grant me quick attack. Now I'm sure a 1 mana 2/2 with quick attack does seem a little overpowered, and obviously I would never suggest that as being playable as like something you should print, but this is obviously a lot different. So first of all, it's quite a bit difficult to actually activate this on turn 1 without being kind of shenanigans. You would have to use like Poro Cannon into like the 1/1 when you discard it, attack with the 1/1, then play this after. But if you're doing that, you're actually losing a lot of priority, and that sort of hand is already quite a bit weaker than something like Urchin into this very same cards, right? So this card's actually pretty fair if you really think about it. Now, my actual concern is that, does it really have a place when you play this card? Follow me here. So when you play this card, the earliest you're realistically going to play this is turn 2. If you played something on turn 1, you can then, and it's their attacking turn, then your turn comes around on turn 2, you attack with your 1-drop, and then you play Quick Bolt Scamp, for example. And so in that respect, it seems like a small upside that seems okay. The quick attack doesn't really seem that relevant on a 2-attack unit, especially since it only gets to attack on like turn 4/3 with its quick attack. So honestly, off the top of my head, it actually seems pretty fair actually. In many respects, just having a 1 mana 2/2 is what this is really going to be, like a solid 90% of the time, and that's kind of fine. If you look at a bunch of the regions in the game that have 1 mana 2/2s, they're all sort of like, hey, they're like this card, but they get slightly better if something X happens, right? And I think that fits this sort of perfectly well, and therefore I think it's a pretty solidly designed card. The real question is quick attack as valuable as some of the other effects that you've seen in the game that are on these 1 mana 2/2s? Like, is it as good as the Plunder one? Is it as good as the Flag one? That's more debatable. So we'll have to see where this sort of card shakes out, but I think this card is pretty well designed and it makes sense and well balanced in comparison to the other 1-drops across the regions. Overall, the Scamp, I kind of think is going to get a 3 in design for me. It's not a super exciting design, but it makes a lot of sense and it's solid in its current form. I generally like it a lot. The biggest question is really going to be, is quick attack on a 2/2 that comes down later really going to be that relevant? I'm not too sure it is, but it is a neat idea and I do like it a lot. So I'm going to give it a solid 3 out of 5 for design. And execution, I think this is a solid 4 out of 5 for execution. It's well balanced, it's solid. Perhaps the only thing I could really say here is that the flavor doesn't really get there for me. I'd like to see more electricity on the character's model, or the character's art, I should say. The art just seems fine. It doesn't something too exciting. It's a solid 4 out of 5. It does its job. It's really good. A bit more would have brought it to a 5, but overall really solid. Nice job. Okay, next up we have the 2 mana 2/1 with quick attack, the Charged Perfectionist. They have the ability charge, create a fleeting Charged Perfectionist in hand. So this is really interesting. So basically this allows you to sort of make a huge wide board as long as you've attacked that turn. And which means that if you really think about it, just due to the nature of how this sort of card sort of works, you're only really going to be able to play this card after an attack, which means that it's going to be almost a solid 2 turns before you get your next attack with this wide board, which gives the opponent a huge surplus of mana to sort of work with to answer these 2/1s. Not that 2/1s are even that difficult to answer in the first place. You got things like the box, you got things like whale, you got things like ice shards, etc, 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 which all make this card quite a bit weaker than I think it really gets to be. For a conditional 4 mana 4/2, like most of the time, or maybe a 6 mana like 6/3, like it does feel a little on the weaker end, if I'm being quite honest. I'm wondering, is there a way to make this like 1 mana, maybe remove the quick attack, and then you just have the ability to quickly pump out a wide board after an attack? That seems probably a little too strong though, so honestly, it's a little hard to say. I'm not sure I would actually play this card just because of how sort of awkward it is. Not only do I have to open attack first to activate the effect, but then on top of that, I would then have to play this card and then activate each card after it as well, and it only multiples of 2. Like on turn 4, do I really want to get 2 2/1 quick attacks? I'm not sure that's something I'm really looking at. I think you would need to have a really good synergy piece with these cards to make these quite powerful, like a big wide buff spell or something that made each of the sequential copies even cheaper. And at that point, I'm not sure what kind of deck you're playing because it feels like a bit too haphazard as a combo deck. Overall, interesting card, and it's a really neat concept, but I definitely feel, especially when you compare it to the 1-drop, this card does feel a little unnecessary, especially with how little value it can really get, unless you're talking like the super late game where both players are in top deck mode, and that's basically the only time I can see it being super useful. So what do I think of the Perfectionist? Unfortunately for the Perfectionist, I think the design is a bit of a miss for me. I don't really see this being too useful, both in the deck that it charged seems to be going towards, and as well as its own combo piece. I'm not too sold on it. I think it's probably going to get a 2 out of 5 for design for me. In execution, I don't think it's strong, but I do think it's a little weak, at least in my perspective. So I do think overall, I'd probably only give it a solid 2 out of 5 for execution as well. Unfortunately, this card was just a bit of a miss for me. All right, the next card is Burst Fire, the 3 mana fast speed spell. Deal 2 to a unit. For each time you attack this turn, increase it by 1. So this is very obviously inspired by Sump Fumes, which is the deal 2 if you've added 2+ cards to your hand, then deal 3 instead. Really cool sort of parallel to it. Instead of focusing on drawing cards or creating cards, instead it's focusing on getting you to attack. Honestly, I think that's pretty fair. The main consideration when it comes to giving P&Z more reliably efficient burn spells is that control decks can just sort of answer anything they want just by going, okay, Mystic Shot here, Static here, Get Excited here, and then just sort of win by attrition, right? And that's kind of unfair and not really fun. But Burst Fire sort of encourages the player to attack, which means that instead of just being able to sit back and just sort of pool their resources, instead they'll have to attack and sort of risk a unit on the board in order to actually get value out of it. And I think that's actually pretty cool, and I do like this a lot. I also do like how there's no upper cap on this. So for example, if you get scouts, if you get rallies, if you get some other things, it can start being even more efficient, right? 3 mana for 3 damage is pretty good, but 3 mana for 4 damage, that's when you're starting to talk a bit more, right? And assuming that the opponent knows that you're playing this sort of deck, they'll therefore have to sort of evaluate that a bit differently too. On your second attack, then you can sort of devote Burst Fire, and then with all your quick attack units that we've seen thus far, you'll be able to threaten a lot more of a range of sort of attacks than the opponent might really be comfortable being able to sort of risk in the first place. They just might take the damage because they're like, oh shit, what if he has a 4 mana burst fire right now? Am I screwed? Right? Like that's a real thing that could happen, right? So overall, really cool design. I really do appreciate how it sort of interacts really well with the rest of the sort of units that have quick attack already. And I think the best choice really was to make this not be able to target the Nexus, because I'm just picturing a world where you do something dumb like play P&Z rally elusives, you attack with a bunch of like Poro cannons, you do a bunch of damage, and then you rally, attack again, and then you play Burst Fire, and they take like 8 damage, right? Like that's kind of lame. I don't really like that. So I'm really glad it only specifies units here. Really good choice on that. So because of the focus on making sure it hits only units, because it sort of encourages that game plan, it's really pushing it for design for me. I actually really like a lot of this. However, the real issue here is that there's basically no ways to activate this card consistently in P&Z. I mean, pushing it beyond its usual standard set So it does get a small bit down for me where I'm just like, is this card really that good in PNZ? Because this definitely feels like maybe more of a Noxian card, for example. So I definitely do think it sort of loses a point there for me. But overall, the card is incredibly well balanced. It's really, really cool. It encourages a really sort of game plan that I really like personally. So I am going to give it a 4 out of 5 for design. Really cool card. And of course, execution, I've alluded to this a couple times now, but a lot of the choices on this card were really made to ensure that it wasn't abusable too badly. And I think it works really well, and obviously has a lot of cards currently in the game that you can sort of compare it to. And those cards are all pretty balanced, and this is pretty flavorful for Burst Fire because it's how it scales up, just like how Zeri does. Honestly, I think I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 5 for execution. I don't really see any other way to make this card any better. Really great stuff on the execution angle. Nice work here. All right, next up is the card Living Battery, the 4-mana burst speed spell. Grant an ally +2/+0 and attack, draw 1. Man, I love these types of cards, guys. I'm not gonna lie. This is the card I saw in the set, and I was like, okay, all right, I want to make a review on this because I actually really love Living Battery. So for those of you who don't know, this is actually a very similar type of card in Magic the Gathering. Curiosity, there's Mirror's Guile, I believe. There's a bunch of cards that are sort of encourage you to get card advantage by engaging in combat, and that's really, really awesome. I know it seems really scary that, oh man, you could put this on a card, I can start drawing cards forever. And while that is true to an extent, there's a couple mitigating factors here. First of all, it's in PNZ, which lacks a powerful way to defend their own units. So if you really want to sort of like go all in on defending a single unit, you're gonna have to go to some of the other regions, which sort of stretches you quite thin across the different regions already. Now, on top of that, even though it says draw 1, remember this card itself is being used for 4 mana. So 4 mana, draw 1 is not that good. 4 mana, draw 2 is on average, and then 4 mana, draw 3 is pretty good. Right? So if you think about it like that, your card needs to attack 3 times and live for it to be good. And at that point, I'm just like, is that really feasible? Is that something you're really going to be looking towards doing? Is that something that's really going to be sustainable? I'm not too sure. So overall, my thought process on this is that I think it's pretty fine, honestly, if the card has to activate itself 3 times to finally get you like above average card. So honestly, I'm kind of okay with this. This card seems really cool, and the +2 attack, let's be honest, is rather incidental. Granting 2 attack is probably worth 1 mana if you look at cards like Brother Bonds, for example. So overall, I think the card is really well balanced. I think it's really solid and really engages with the more aggressive way to gain card advantage in this game. I think honestly, sometimes you can get so much card advantage in this game just by building blockers or by just turtling and getting a bunch of units. I think overall this is a lot more interesting to me for ways for a deck to gain card advantage, especially when it sort of encourages such a high top end. Like, oh man, you can put this on the scout, you can put this on a unit that can attack multiple times, right? Like there's a lot of cool ways you can build this, and thankfully, since most of them are out of region, you're able to sort of like balance it that way too. So honestly, really solid card here. I like it a lot. There is a debate if this is more of a non-PNZ effect, but honestly, I think it's pretty fair. I think the real question in terms of balance here is what if PNZ gets some more of their more powerful elusives eventually? Like they already have some elusives now, but like hypothetically, if you get strong enough elusive, is this a card that you'd really like to put on it? And my gut says probably it's fine, but I'm not too sure. Overall, because of the design being so focused on pushing this aggressive game plan and sort of encouraging the player to keep on attacking to get more value, which inherently puts the unit at risk, which inherently gives the opponent a way to answer it, I think it's a really, really solid design. I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5 design. I really like this card a lot. As for execution, it's a bit harder for me because I don't actually think this is that good of a card. Don't get me wrong, it is strong. It is a solid card overall, but I do think that there's a real possibility that you could make this cheaper. I know that seems crazy, but hear me out. I just don't see it being feasible that you'll be able to attack 3 times consistently with a card. And if you have, I feel like you're winning the game anyways, so the card advantage doesn't matter that much. Man. I'm just comparing this to other 4-mana combat tricks that exist in the game, and I'm like, this gets me a single card on the turn it's played. Then I have to wait 2 turns for me able to get another card from it, and even then, it's after the attacks anyway. So it's hard to really see how this card is extremely powerful. So I do think it's maybe slightly underpowered, and I think overall I will give it a solid 4 out of 5 for execution. It is a really, really cool card, and I love this card a lot. Great work with Living Battery. So next up we have Zeri's Lightning Crash. It is a 4 mana, grant an ally 3 attack and quick attack. Charged, it starts a free attack, and then obviously create a Zeri in your deck. interesting card here. So obviously granting +3 attack and quick attack, that's totally fine for P and Z, but starting a free attack again, I'm just not sure this really suits P and Z that much. I mean, the idea of getting multiple attacks in a region that has natural access to elusives is really scary to me, especially when you're pairing it with the ability to get additional attack here and built in, right? Like, I know this doesn't seem too much like it, but in a way, this is kind of like a Cataclysm. Obviously, it's a lot more conditional, but it gives you a reward as well. So, it's tough. This card is really tough for me to evaluate because I really don't feel as though PNZ should have such reliable access to this outside of obviously champions who are allowed to break region pie. So this is a difficult question for me. I do think I'm gonna be a bit harsher on this one because it's a spell and allows you to do a lot more crazier things with it. But overall, I'm not gonna give it a score just yet because I need to know the context around it. I need to know what Zeri's like in order to really evaluate this. So let's take a look at Zeri next, and then I'll come back and evaluate both of these separately. All right, here she is, Zeri, the 3-mana 4/2 with quick attack. Play, I start a free attack, and level up, I've seen you attack 4+ times. When she levels up, she becomes a 3-mana 5/3 with quick attack. When you activate charged outside of combat or play, I start a free attack. Attack, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. So Zeri's really cool here. 3-mana 4/2 with quick attack is pretty good, and it already comes with the powerful ability of starting a free attack on the turn you player, allowing you to activate your charged abilities on the opponent's turn, something that PNZ can't typically do. So that's obviously sort of the design section she's sort of fitting into here. And her ability is to, I've seen you attack 4 times, and given that she herself generates an attack herself, it's actually relatively faster than you think, kind of like how scouts worked. But yeah, overall, not a bad design. The main comparisons you can sort of make here are cards like Zed, for example, which allows him to attack with another 3/2 additionally with him on the turn he's played, and she's sort of just like kind of like that, but since she's one body and she attacked twice, it makes equal sense there. I know it does seem a little strong, but it's actually not too much different from the pressure that, like, say, Zed can put out, for example. Now, of course, notably, Zed also is in a region that can protect himself really easily, whereas Zeri is not. And with 2 health, she's pretty much easily to remove by almost anything, and given that her level up requires her to be on board and to have seen the attacks, she's going to be quite vulnerable to anything to really get that level up to go off in the first place, which is why she's so powerful on her front half anyways, right? Like, as a 3-mana 4/2 with the ability to start a free attack immediately, she's pushing that aggressive game plan in PNZ while still not being, like, particularly punished if she ends up dying because she's an aggressive card that's meant to create tempo. Overall, not too bad. I really do like the idea of giving PNZ's champion a way to sort of activate these free attacks. I mentioned earlier how I don't think free attacks should be in PNZ, and as always, champions, as stated by Riot, are allowed to break the region restrictions. So let's say you want a charge to work in PNZ, then yeah, making a champion that can attack on free attack, giving them a way to activate the charge when even on the opponent's turn, is a really, really great way to do that. So I'm not sure it was necessary to make those sort of free attack abilities on other cards, and instead use it to make Zeri special within PNZ. So I think that's my first sort of impression of this, because I think the card is really solid. It's well balanced, it's really cool, I like a lot about it. But you know what? We gotta talk about Lightning Crash. You see, Lightning Crash gives you 3 attack and quick attack, which is obviously a strong ability, but then it also allows you to start a free attack as well, so that obviously synergizes with Zeri to one extent as well. But here's the issue. The situations where you get a champion spell are when you have a champion on board and then you have drawn the second copy of the champion, right? So the issue is that imagine you're in a world where you're in a top deck war against your opponent, you have a Zeri on the board, you draw a card, you get an additional Zeri. That's actually not very good. So allow me to explain. So first of all, giving Zeri +3 attack, obviously that's fine because she's obviously a quick attack unit. She's gonna make a lot of use of those 3 attack, but giving her quick attack a second time doesn't do anything, obviously. So that's kind of unfortunate. But on top of that, if she's already leveled, she can't even use the ability to start the additional free attack because she's gonna do it anyways. So there's a lot of redundancy on her champion spell when the whole point of champion spells is to push the game plan when you've drawn 2 of them. So the issue here is that, like, when you have Zeri on the board, you need another card on the board to make use of the second Zeri in your hand. And that point, yeah, I feel like the card might as well be something else. I think Lightning Crash is an interesting idea. I just don't think it really works well as Zeri's champion spell because there's so much redundancy in the card effects. So I think overall, Zeri's champion spell is a bit of a miss for me from a design perspective. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5 for design. And execution, I do think it's relatively balanced, but I still don't think it working well with the champion is a good call here. I think I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 for execution. But talking about Zeri, back to Zeri, I think Zeri's really, really cool. I really like the concept, as I sort of mentioned earlier, and how she enables charged in a unique way and allows P&Z to have a combat-centric champion, even on the opponent's turns. These are all things I really enjoy and really like about her. And overall, I think charged and how she works with it is really, really solid. Now we can see why the Perfectionist gets to get copied multiple times, because you're going to keep attacking with additional Zeris for every single one you play. Now that makes a lot more sense, right? So things sort of come together really well in this set, and I really, really like that. Zeri overall is really, really cool. I think she works really well. Overall, her entire kit and set here make a lot of sense intrinsically with each other. There's a couple missteps, I think, especially when it comes to region identity, but I think Zeri herself is really solid. I'm gonna give her a 4 out of 5 for design. Really solid champion design here. I really like it a lot. The biggest misstep, I think, is just making her champion spell something that doesn't really work with her that well. And then execution-wise, I think she's actually quite balanced. I know she seems a little crazy and a little splashy for P&Z champion, but overall, I'm pretty happy with her. I think I'm gonna give her a solid 5 out of 5 for execution. I couldn't imagine doing this better myself. I really like it a lot. I think perhaps there's one angle here is where maybe you could argue that the number of times she should attack should probably go up by 1 maybe. I could see that being a debate, but overall, I'm really happy with this Zeri. Amazing work on this T-Rox. I really love the whole set as a whole, but I think Zeri as well as Living Battery are my 2 highlights in terms of cards that I really enjoyed from this set, and I think those are the 2 that are really sort of get the idea of what Zeri's going for. But what do you guys think? What ratings would you give these cards? Please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I know T-Rox would love to hear some feedback on each of these cards, and hell, I would love to hear some feedback on some of my critiques. Did I miss something? Did I miss a crazy combo that would totally pop off or destroy the game? Please let me know, because I would love to make sure I keep myself in check on those things. And of course, if you want your card to be reviewed by me, feel free to check out the form in the description, where I will be taking in all cards that come in. I'll sort of review them quickly, look them over, and if there's some cards I really want to highlight or review on these videos, I will do that, and I will of course tag you in the name and give you credit and all that stuff as well. As always though, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you want to see more content like this, or any sort of more focus on custom cards, please do let me know, because I gotta know what you guys want here. I make speculation videos, I make fighting game videos, I make Legends of Runeterra videos. I probably am stretching myself a little too thin, if we're being honest. But anyways, thank you so much again for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.